That's domestic as
So how's it going, guys? We're doing the rear drum to disc brake install on the Mach 1. We got one side on because I beat my head a little bit on how to do it. This kit I got from Summit is it fits pretty well, but it fits really tight actually. So there's a little bit of modification that had to occur. But I did get the driver's side on, so you can see it's all buttoned up there. There's no light, but it's on there. And now we got to get the passenger side on, so I wanted to walk you guys through how to do it. So first things first, take the tire off, get the car on jack stands, and then we're going to go ahead and there's 4 bolts, the flange bolts for the axle. You can either go through here or you can use a wrench. They're usually right here. If you look on the back side, you can see that there's 4 bolts, 1, 2, and then 2 on the other side. So take those 4 flange bolts off. They just moved them somewhere, but they're T-shaped. You can pull them out. The next step, we're gonna take the hard brake line off and the e-brake off. I already took loose the e-brake from the front side. If you don't know how to do that, look that up somewhere else, or Chilton's magazine or something. Basically, you just want to take everything loose for the e-brake. We're gonna pull this cable off from the middle, and then we're gonna pull this hard line off, and then we'll pull the axle out. There's no need to disassemble the brake itself. All right, so we got the brake line loose, we got the e-brake cable loose. Everything will come off as one assembly. So let's pull the axle out. You want to be careful to not tear up the bearing, so you kind of want to hold it as it comes out. So let's pull that out. As you can see, everything comes with it, and we'll simply stand this up, hopefully without hitting the car like I just did. And you'll see that this will come off as one piece. So first you want to pull the gasket up over the axle bearing, as you see here, and then if you pull up, you got to kind of wiggle it and make sure that you're coming up straight, and then the whole drum brake assembly will come off as one piece from the axle. So now we got to cut this axle flange off, so I'll show you how to do that. All right, so I will say this next part is the hardest part about this install when you're doing the disc brake conversion. Out here we have the axle itself. What we got to do is take and cut this flange off. It's not easy. You don't want to nick or scratch up the bearing. You don't want to scratch up the hub. So it has to be cut off. I'll show you guys how I did the first side. I nicked the bearing a couple times, not too bad to make any noise or anything. So first things first, you're going to need a cutting wheel. I guess you could, I was going to use a Dremel, but with a little more strategy, but this works as well. My Dremel was dead. So a cutting wheel with a cutting blade, obviously metal. I use vice grips because I don't have a workbench. If you have a workbench, this will be easier. A large chisel, a small chisel, and a butane torch to heat it up and make it stretchable. As you can see, this is the original one. So as you can see, I cut clean through, got a nice cut, heated it up, bent it out. A lot of trial and error, a lot of beating on it. So hopefully this one goes smoother. But that's pretty much it. This is the hardest part of the install. And then it's just a matter of bolting on the bracketing. So let's get this cut off. And definitely don't forget, safety first. Wear some form of protection. These aren't very good. You can get in behind them, but this is America. So. A little dangerous, so unplug that. We got a clean cut, and now we're going to heat it up with the torch, make it easier to bend off. We'll use this chisel and my larger chisel to basically make separation. As you can see, there's a couple gouges in the axle shaft. Not to worry about those too much. Might throw off some harmonics, but the main thing is don't tear up this bearing too much. So let's start chiseling away here. Let's get the torch. Hopefully you can see that. We just want to get it hot enough to be able to bend. All right, so I just realized that I took a bunch of pictures and not video, but I'll fill you in on what I did. I finished out taking that flange off. I came in, I cleaned with brake cleaner the axle shaft itself. You got to put the seal that came off the car back on the tube.
and then slide it back into the axle housing. Make sure you clean the flange. Basically all we did was put that in, and then we have the 4 T-bolts here, which I put new hardware in for. You don't have to use new hardware, but that mounts your mounting plate. This mounting plate I mounted backwards because my shock is on the inside of the car, so the rule of thumb is to mount that opposite of your shock. Make sure there's clearance. The next piece of the puzzle, I put in the caliper mounting bracket here, which is the threaded piece where the caliper mounts. What you want to do is measure, basically you have to assemble this on here 2 or 3 times depending on how good you want to get it. I've already done the other side, so I know I need the medium spacers. There are the small spacers. There's medium, small, and large spacers, which push this out or in, or whichever way you want to go. You want to put the rotor on, put everything all together. I know it sucks, but once you do one side, you can just use the same measurement for the other. And then make sure that there's enough slop in the pads themselves. You want not the least amount, not the most amount, the just right amount of slop on the pads. And that's how you pick what size. So we got everything bolted up here. The next step is to put the rotor on. One thing about the rotor in this kit is it doesn't fit. It's the right lug pattern, but these studs are too big. So essentially we have to Dremel out or drill out the holes in it. So I'm gonna go do that, and we will put the rotor on, put the caliper on, run our lines, and this side will be buttoned up. So let me drill that out and we'll come back and put the caliper on. All right, so we got our caliper. The caliper is side specific. The telltale sign is this piece here, which is the top of the e-brake. You want pointing up and out. So when I mount this, it'll be this way, up and out. To get started here, to mount this, you want to take the 2 Allen key bolts out, one here and one there. Let's go ahead and take those out. Set them aside for now because you're gonna be, this thing fits on there really well. You don't really have to have those in to get it lined up, unlike some other rear calipers. I don't know if you've ever done rear calipers, but on most newer cars you kind of got to hang it really well. Next thing we're going to do is take the brake pads out of here. We'll need to put those back in, but this fell out in shipping, so we'll take those out. And now we get to finagle, put the pads back in, and finagle it to get it on. So let's do that. All right, so we got the caliper mounted. These 2 bolts, if you have a leaf spring car, it's kind of a pain in the neck to get the bottom one in, but I got it in there. It just barely cleared. Next up, we're gonna put in the banjo bolt and the e-brake cable. If you don't know what a banjo bolt is, basically it's just a bolt with the hole in it for the brake line, and the brake line fits in this side. You're gonna put the washers on either side of this, and the brake line, you're supposed to cut probably here, and reflange it and put a new brake line hardware on there. On the other side, I just made a U-turn right here and mounted it. Probably not the safest thing going towards the exhaust, but my exhaust cuts out before even the rear end. So this is actually just hanging here for no reason. So I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. Then we'll talk about the e-brake cable, and then we will bleed them, and hopefully we can put the car on the ground. So as you can see, same thing on this side. We took the brake line, we did a little U-turn here, and we mounted the banjo bolt. It's a 10mm, the only metric piece on the entire setup here, but went around here, made a nice U. Make sure it's a nice clean bends. You don't want to kink this hose. If you do have to cut it and reflange it. So like I said, you probably should cut here and flange it and just run this straight to here. But I don't feel like doing that, nor do I want to run to the parts store again. So we're gonna leave it as it is. And now we are gonna connect the e-brake cable. This one didn't come with, on my driver's side, or on my passenger side, the e-brake cable goes all the way around to the driver's side. As you can see, this piece here, I'm gonna try to take this out and reuse it. The piece that it comes with is meant for a halfway style, kind of like the driver's side where it goes halfway up. So I can't use what they have here in this kit. So let's try to take this out and I'll show you how to mount the e-brake cable into the new caliper. All right, so we got the e-brake out of the old drum. If you don't know how to do that, I would suggest reading up on how to do that. Basically, I broke these tabs off because they're not really needed on this assembly. So what I'm gonna do, as you can see, this is the line that goes all the way around the car. I'm gonna feed this through here on this spring, and then you basically pull it through and put it in the notch. Now on the new cable, the tolerance is so high on this piece, I actually had to bend it out a little bit on the other side to get the new piece in. This cable seems smaller, the factory one, so I probably won't have to do that. But you basically want to finagle the cable through the spring here, around and in. So let's do that real quick.